Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a potential big derecho event that's going to be happening over parts of the southeastern United States. This is going to be for later this week, probably right around Friday, Saturday, and maybe even into early Sunday. We already have an enhanced risk of severe weather out for tomorrow, and a slight risk of severe weather out for Saturday as well. So the Storm Prediction Center is already catching on to this idea that we could see a big line of storms that stretches multiple states. That's going to be moving throughout parts of the southeast. We're going to be timing this out for you guys and giving you a lot of detail in today's video, so make sure you are staying tuned all the way until the end. Here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like. You can see that we have some frost advisories and freeze warnings up through southwestern Oregon, as well as some winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings in effect for southeastern Montana, northeastern Wyoming, and westernmost South Dakota. We also have a bunch of red flag warnings back through the southwestern United States, mainly through the southern and central Rockies there, and also back through the Great Plains. We have some wind advisories and high wind warnings up for parts of the western United States. And other than that, we really don't have many more watches or warnings currently in place. Yesterday in Falcon Lake, Texas, they had the high temperature for the lower 48. They got to 103 degrees Fahrenheit, and the national low temperature was in Petersink, Utah. They got to -1 degree Fahrenheit. Millbank, South Dakota, they had the highest rainfall report. They got 2.22 inches of rainfall, and the highest snowfall report was also in South Dakota, but on the other side of South Dakota, 6 miles east of Edgemont, South Dakota, they got 15 inches of reported snowfall in that area. Here's what the Storm Prediction Center is showing for tomorrow. So this is Friday, and we're looking at a slight risk of severe weather, which already covers much of the lower Mississippi River Valley back through parts of the south central part of the country. You can see that we have that slight risk in the yellow, and then we have an enhanced risk kind of in the stripe from eastern Texas to western Alabama, where we have a enhanced risk of severe weather. So this is where they're thinking that we have an actually fairly decent chance of seeing some damaging, destructive storms. And if we look at the tornado risk, you can see that we have a 10% risk, which is actually fairly high. 10% risk, even though it doesn't sound like that much of a risk, it is still fairly high. This is a 10% chance that any 25 mile radius of any location in here in this yellow region is going to see a tornado. So you add that up, and you're looking at maybe about a dozen tornadoes that could happen over the span of this entire event. So definitely not looking too good so far. And if we look at the hail, luckily it's not really piled on top of each other. So for example, the area with the highest tornado risk is not the area with the highest hail risk as well. So they're kind of separated a little bit, so that is a good thing. You can see that we do have a significant risk of hail in the kind of hatched black area, and then you can see also in the red area, that's where we're looking at a 30% chance of seeing some hail. And then if we look at the wind area, that's shifted back through parts of Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas, where we do have a 30% chance of hail, or of actually wind damage, and we actually have a significant risk of seeing some destructive winds, I believe over 64 knots in this area right here in southern Mississippi and northeastern Louisiana. So a fairly high risk of seeing some damaging winds. If we look at the day 3 outlook, which would be for Saturday, you're going to see that we have a very large area of general risk, which goes all the way up through the eastern United States. We have that marginal risk, which is mainly for the southeast, but pokes up through parts of the Tennessee Valley, and then we have a slight risk of severe weather back through parts of Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and a little bit of Louisiana as well. And if we look at the day 3 outlook for just a general chance of severe weather, you see that in that yellow region, we also have a 15% chance of seeing some severe weather. So overall, it looks like a fairly large event. If we look at the excessive rainfall, you see that the Weather Prediction Center has a 10 to 20% chance of seeing some flash flooding in these areas that covers much of Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, and some of the surrounding areas as well. And then here would be the day 3 outlook, and you can see that we also have a 10 to 20% slight risk of seeing some flash flooding right over the eastern Gulf of Mexico and the eastern Gulf states right there. Here's what the NAM model is showing, and we're going to play this out, show you the simulated radar. So this is starting out late tomorrow, so right around 4 p.m. Central Daylight Time tomorrow, we're looking at some scattered pop-up thunderstorms back through mainly Oklahoma, southern Missouri, and maybe even popping through Arkansas by this point. Moving this forward, you're going to see that we're going to get a little bit more organized of a cluster of storms back through northern Arkansas, a little bit of Oklahoma, and northeastern Texas as well. A few of these could be tornadic, especially on the southern end of here, where we do have a higher risk of seeing tornadic activity. And then if we head this forward a little bit, you're now starting to see, unfortunately, what looks like a potential very large straight line wind damage event, where we have a straight line of storms bringing in a lot of gusty winds, potentially some hail, and even a few spin-up tornadoes, mainly because of the wind motion. So you can see that we have a lot of cold air being pressed in on the western end of this, and the winds would actually be a little bit more straight right out of the west. And then on the front end of this, you can see kind of in the spin with the Futurecast radar, we do have a little bit of a spin of warm air like that. So you are seeing a little bit of spin, and that's how you can get a few tornadoes to pop up. So if that does happen, just because it's a line of storms does not mean that tornadoes are out of the question. It's less likely, but it is definitely still a possibility, and I would definitely not count it out at all. I think it's actually likely that we see a couple tornadoes on Saturday, especially Saturday morning into the early afternoon hours. And you can see this line of storms is already looking fairly robust, and it's only going to get a little bit stronger after this. So this is by Saturday, right around 4 in the morning, Central Daylight Time. This would be 5 Eastern Time, and we're looking at this very robust line of storms moving through northern Louisiana, northern Mississippi, and western Tennessee by this point. That dark red and almost that purple shade is very, very heavy rainfall in those areas. Moving this forward, here's by 7 in the morning Central Time, and we're looking at this line of storms just continuing. It's all the way to the Gulf Coast, and then it's moving all the way up through parts of Alabama, Mississippi, and then all the way up into Tennessee, and maybe even lingering into Kentucky. So it's a huge line of storms, a Derecho-Like event, which basically a derecho is basically just a big area, a big line of storms. Has to technically have Category 1 hurricane force sustained winds, although you could say that this storm is Derecho-like, even though it's not expected to have necessarily those strong of winds. I don't think it'll really necessarily meet that criteria, that high criteria that it does have, but I think nonetheless you're going to see a Derecho-like event where we're going to see a large area of thunderstorms in a straight line that's going to move across several states in the southeast. So you will have many of those characteristics. The winds will still be gusting to 60 or 70, but not sustained like we've seen in other major derecho events in the past. This is still by Saturday morning, so we're only at 10 in the morning Central Daylight Time. The line luckily is starting to weaken by this point. It's getting a little bit more narrow, but still by this point, we have a still very robust line of storms. Definitely something that you want to take precautions for. We have a general area of rain still left behind this, so you're going to see a lot of rain on the back end, maybe another quarter inch of rain before the entire system moves out. But you're really going to have that big burst of heavy rainfall, strong winds, and all the derecho-like symptoms of having that type of storm. You're going to see all of that happen within the span of about 5 to 15 minutes. Then it should pass by, and then you're going to see a lot of rainfall on the back end that should pass in another hour or two of the entire event starting. So this would be by Saturday, right around the early afternoon hours. It's starting to weaken, but look at the panhandle of Florida. It's still moving throughout those areas, and unfortunately it still is quite robust and intense by that point. It does start to weaken, however, as we go through the evening hours. Much of the energy in the atmosphere has already been used up, so it's just kind of using whatever is left over, and there isn't much left over, so it's starting to die out and weaken a little bit more, and then the threat has mainly subsided. You might see a couple brief spin-ups here and there. That shouldn't cause too much damage, mainly just a few pockets of heavier rain, not a lot of risks associated with it. Here's what the NAM model is showing for the CAPE, convective available potential energy, and this is quite impressive. So starting off by Friday in the early afternoon, we have some quite high Cape numbers already, up closer to 3,000 in some of these areas in Mississippi and Louisiana. But that's not even the peak of this. If we actually look, this is the peak. So this is by Friday night, and we're looking at a peak Cape amount of around 4,500 in this area through Mississippi and Louisiana, and also in southern Arkansas as well. So in that area, we have a lot of instability, a lot of energy, and a lot of moisture throughout that area. And even back through the southeast, just because you're not seeing 2 to 3,000 Cape, you're still seeing 1 to 2,000 Cape, which is still well above what you would typically see when you're dealing with these thunderstorm events. So we definitely have ample energy, and even though you're not necessarily getting the 4,000 Cape numbers that you see back through a little bit further to the west, 1,000, 2,000 Cape, that still gets a fairly robust thunderstorms out and going. So you really have to take precaution if you're anywhere near that 1,000, 2,000 Cape value region. And then moving this forward a little bit, here's by Saturday early in the morning, the thunderstorm is starting to roll through, and it's starting to use up some of the energy by this point. But still, out ahead of this, we still have 2,500 plus Cape in these areas, which is well above the amount that's needed to fuel this type of storm. And then you can see why it's really dying out over Florida and Georgia is because we only have Cape values of about 500 to 1,000, which can still spawn up a thunderstorm. But with this robust of a storm, it's not going to be able to handle it and support it as well as the 3,000, 4,000 Cape areas would have. This is the SCP supercell composite parameter, and this is a good way of seeing whether there's a chance of supercells developing, which is typically the storm type that does develop tornadoes and hail, and it's usually regarded as one of the more intense thunderstorm types. And definitely one of the most dangerous thunderstorm types that you really want to watch out for. So you can see some values getting closer to 14, 15 back through Texas, Louisiana, southwestern Arkansas. And then for the next frame, you can see that out ahead of this line of storms, the line of storms is right back through here by this point. And you can see ahead of it, we still have values that are well above that 2.5, 3 mark, which is typically that threshold that you want to use. So they're maybe 2, 3, 4 times that amount. You're getting up closer to 8, 9, 10 in terms of the SCP parameter. So well above what you would typically need. If we look at the STP, the significant tornado parameter, this is showing you how likely it is for a tornado. The threshold for this one is just 1, so you only need that blue shading to really have a threat or a chance, a low chance, but at least a threat of seeing some tornadoes. And we're maxing out the scale. We're getting closer to 9 or 10, and that's at the very, very top of the scale. So you can see in southern Arkansas some maxed out values throughout that area, and then going even a little bit more, you're going to see that we have even more robust and intense parameters back through parts of Arkansas, Louisiana, and also into Mississippi as well. Here's the dew points, and you can see that we have dew points actually reaching 70 degrees, which is very, very humid, very, very warm. It's going to be a muggy and sticky day outside for Friday night and Saturday morning. So you really don't want to be out during that time period. It's going to be way more humid and way more uncomfortable actually at night than it will be during the day, because during the day, you're not even going to be as warm as during the overnight hours when that system is approaching and pulling in all that warm, moist air. So you can see that we have dew points up through the 70s, which is, you only need 60-degree dew points to spawn up a good thunderstorm. We're maybe 10-degree dew points above that. So well above what you would typically need. Here's the temperatures, and these are also going to be very, very warm. Here's the high temperature on Friday, and you can see that we have pockets that are getting above 80 in Louisiana and Texas. You go through that main area that's seeing the thunderstorms, all above 75 for the most part, at least above 70 in all these areas. And then you're also heating up back through the Carolinas and Florida, where you guys are all above that 80-degree threshold, maybe over 85 or 90 degrees in some of these areas. And then here's by Saturday, and it's actually warmer back through parts of Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Texas, but it's also for the area that's going to be impacted on Saturday, very warm back through parts of the coastal southeast as well. So you're dealing with temperatures up through the upper 70s, the low 80s, even through parts of Florida getting into the low 90s. Here's the precipitable water, and this is basically showing you if you were to squeeze all the rainfall out of the cloud that's in the atmosphere at once. This is how much rainfall is actually being stored, and you can see that we have values closer to 2 inches of stored rainfall in the atmosphere, and that's very, very high. Typically, we see maybe an inch, inch and a quarter at best in some of these events in parts of April and in portions of April and March. So the fact that we're seeing 2, even above 2 in this little red pocket right here is really, really concerning in terms of this thunderstorm event, because that shows that we have a lot of moisture in the atmosphere to deal with and to contend with this thunderstorm event. So hopefully you guys are staying safe during this thunderstorm as it's going to be happening. I'll have a couple more updates on this storm for you guys. So again, stay safe if you're in the path of this thunderstorm event, because it does look like it'll be fairly major and something that you really want to take precautions on. And again, I will have a couple more updates, maybe 2 or 3 more updates on this particular storm system. And that is going to wrap it up, though, for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.